Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Rowe. We're looking in geometry. This is part A, and this is lesson 6. And in this little video, we're going to look at how to create a perpendicular bisector. So just a couple of things that we're going to need here. Remember, we're doing constructions in this lesson, so we need one of these 3 compasses. And we need a straight edge. And again, I'm going to show you all 3, depending on which one you have. Just use those techniques when you're making your perpendicular bisector. So if you recall a couple of terms here. So perpendicular, that means it's going to intersect at a right angle. And a bisector means that it's going to be a midpoint. So we're going to intersect at a midpoint. And it just happens that the segment that we're using to bisect will be a perpendicular line. So let's take a look at what we got to do here. So I won't need my ruler first. I'm going to need one of my compasses. So I'm going to use the standard compass first. So what I want to do is I want to open my compass so that it is obviously more than halfway across the segment. So that's obviously more than halfway. We can even open it just a little bit longer if you wanted to. Just make sure it's not more than the segment. So make sure it's just a little over halfway. And remember, we want the sharp point, the non-writing point. This is the writing point, this is the non-writing point. So we want the non-writing point on one segment. Let me go ahead and label these as A and B. And so I want to put my point on the tip right there. Let me get it on there, there we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an arc above the line. So making an arc above the line. Again, I'm trying to make it dark enough where we can see it. And then I want to make one below the line. Now, some teachers will teach you to go ahead and make a full arc. You can do the full arc if you want to. I like these shorter arcs. It just makes a cleaner presentation. And so now, without moving the compass, we want to move the compass to the other end. And we'll put my point on point B just like that. And I want to make an arc that crosses the arc I just made. So I'm going to make an arc right here that crosses that one. And I'm going to come below and make one that crosses the other. So you see we got 2 arcs. And what happens here is we end up with 2 new points. There's a point right here. And a point right here. And then what I want to do is I want to take my straight edge and I want to connect those 2 points. And so now that should be a perpendicular bisector. So let's check the bisector part. The whole segment is about 8 centimeters. It goes up to 8 right there. And it looks like we cut it in half at about 4. So we did good on the bisector part. Let's take a look at the perpendicular part. So if it's perpendicular, that means this angle should be a right angle. So let's take a look. And if we put our compass, our protractor right there, you see this line goes right up the middle right there, and it's right across the edge here. So this is a perpendicular bisector. Looks like we did a good job on that one. So you want to open more than half. So open your compass more than half. More than halfway. You want to mark above and below. From each point, So remember I did it from this point first, and then I went ahead and did the same thing from the second point. And then finally, we want to connect the points of intersection. So we want to connect these intersection points. Now these steps will be pretty much the same for all of these. It's just which tool you're using. So those are the 3 steps here. Open more than halfway, mark above and below from each endpoint, and then connect the endpoints. So let's take a look at our first safety compass. So here is my safety compass. Remember the safety compass, it has a crosshair in this hole right here. That's where we're going to put our endpoint. And then we want to mark from one of these 2 holes. It doesn't matter which one. It just all depends on how wide you need it to open. So I'm going to put my endpoint right there. I'll go ahead and open my compass up so I can slide it where I need it to slide. I obviously want it to be more than halfway, so I'm going to use the second hole right here. I'm going to close my compass so that locks, so that doesn't move anymore. Check my dot, make sure I'm more than halfway, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to mark above and below. And you want to make sure that arc, when you make your arc, is where you'll make sure that you will intersect when you set it to the other side. So I'm going to put my endpoint on the other side now, and I'm going to cross that one. And I'm going to put it up here and cross the other one. I'm trying to do it without making too many moves so you can see exactly what I'm doing. You see my crosshair is on that endpoint, and I'm using this outer hole. And there we go. I got my 2 intersecting arcs, my 2 intersecting marks. I'm going to connect those with my straight edge. And it's always good to mark your straight edges pretty well. Most people get this wrong because they just don't mark the straight edge right. And so there's my perpendicular bisector. Let's see how well we did with this one. This one looks like it might be a tiny bit off, but we'll see. Let's go. So looks like it's an 8 centimeter segment. It looks like it's right in between at 4. So let's check the perpendicular part. So if this is perpendicular, we did a really good job here. And it looks like, if we line that up, it looks like a pretty good perpendicular bisector. So that's using the first safety compass. So let's take a look at the last safety compass. So remember, this is, if you have this one, it's a great compass. It's just not my favorite, but you can work with it if you got it. And so same rules here. Remember that this hole right here is where the endpoint goes that you're going to mark from. So we're going to mark based on that endpoint. So you put your finger right there. You want to make sure you're more than halfway. So I'm going to use this hole right here, which is from the 2-inch mark, 1, 2, 3, 4 over. That's the biggest problem with these, is making sure you're using the correct hole each time. So I've got them both marked. I'm going to slide my compass over to the other hole. Again, put your finger down. Remember, I'm going to hold it out to the side so we can see it. We were 1, 2, 3, 4 over, so there's my mark there. And then I'm going to move my finger out the way. And I'm going to come up here from the 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there is the perpendicular bisector marks. I'm going to make my segment. And there is my perpendicular bisector. So So let's see how well we did here again. We're going to measure using our straight edge. This is the only time we're going to use our straight edge. Oh, look at that. We did pretty good. We got a 8 centimeter. Let's get it turned right. We got an 8 centimeter segment. We're halfway at 4. Let's check to make sure it's a perpendicular. Oh, look at that. We did pretty good. We are cooking right there. Look at that. So that's 3 ways to do a perpendicular bisector depending on the instrument you're using. So when you're asked in the lesson, I need to see these marks. These marks are the important part. If I don't see these marks, I'm thinking you probably didn't do this with the compass. You probably just measured and did your best to make a right angle. So use a compass and a straight edge to make a perpendicular bisector. If you struggle with it, please let me know in a teacher message or make an appointment for a help session.